Hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Code Remix Weekly. With you, your regular host, my name is Tim Spick, and with me is Sam Snyder.
Good to see you, Tim. How you been this week? You just got back from another snowboarding adventure, right?
I did 4 days of snowboarding. I think we covered like 300 kilometers in 4 days.
Whew,
Pretty good,
nice,
efficient.
nice. So, are you a pretty expert snowboarder at this point? You go and see a hill of bumpy moguls and just have no problem twisting between them?
That is something that I've managed. Yeah, I used to be really scared of
Nice,
those. I'd get launched off them and off the side of the slopes, but no, nowadays it's pretty good. Yeah, so
nice.
pleased with that.
How about jumps? Does the place you like to go have like a section with like ramps and other kind of human made obstacles to send you flying into the air? Do you partake in
I, I
any of that?
did I did go through the fun park mostly because I have a nephew who's now 9 years old and also starting to do like the fun park. So I had to
There
show
you
that
go.
his close to 40-year-old uncle Tim can also do the jumps.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta look
Yeah,
cool in front of the 9 year old. If you don't, like, why are you even there? Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely,
So,
absolutely. So you can totally hit it. So what I'm hearing is you could totally hit a ramp and spin around 3 times and do 2 flips and land it perfectly. Yeah.
by accident maybe if I try enough, but yeah,
Tim's like, yes, in some number of trials, I would might might eventually hit one. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Got
yeah,
to be
yeah.
aspirational for the nephew for sure.
But yeah, no, at least having fun. So that was good. And then now back to work and
Yeah,
yeah, should
welcome
be good.
back to the even more exciting world of software development.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, it's good to be back. I'm catching up a bit, and we're gonna take you all through all the things that I knew in the past week or so,
Yeah,
and then as always, I'll share a couple of quick tabs. That one. So one of the things that is new is that next week you're gonna see both me and Merlin present at the JavaLand conference. We're gonna go to Nuremberg in Germany, where we're gonna be presenting, and we'll also have a booth. So if you wanna come find us for some stickers, maybe some shirts, some bags, some booklets, we have all kinds of things, then definitely check us out there. It would be great to hear like the use cases that you're after, and then share our story with, in Merlin's case, just the Grundlagen des Migration Engineering mit OpenAI, just like a German introduction to OpenAI, and then from my side, the generative AI on millions of lines of code. So should be fun.
very cool.
And then also new is that we can now announce that we are not going to be the only ones at the Hack Track in Miami at the start of no, start of May. But there's going to be two other companies there as well. One of them is going to be CodeGate, which they have a guardian angel that they put between your AI assistants and LLMs to allow you to shield your privacy and supercharge your productivity. So they're going to be in one part of the Hack Track to be able to get folks on board with their toolings, and that should be really neat to see. And then also at the same hack track is going to be Azul. So for folks that already know their offerings with custom base images for Java, you can now adopt those at scale at the Code Remix Summit. So that should be really good. And of course, Sam and I are going to be there as well as a couple others. So if you have some custom use cases, do seek us out at the Code Remix Summit in early May. So hope to see you there. Then
Yeah.
also new is that we're going to be at the JCon conference at the same time. We're going to do two conferences from one company at the same time.
So
So
that's
we're
ambitious, even for you, Tim. I feel like usually you do one conference at a time, but trying to do two at a time, that's
I, d- I do try to keep them on the same continent when I have two in one week, but this one I couldn't manage. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be there. But so I'll be in Miami, but Merlin and a couple others will be making their way to JCon Europe in Cologne, and then we'll be sponsoring there as well. So if you want to, same as before, if you want to get some fresh stickers for your laptop, definitely seek us out there. So it should be good. And then at the end of May, we're going to be at Spring IO, so the conference in Barcelona. I'm not supposed to say I have a favorite, but this was going to be my favorite. So if you want to make it out there, then
Wait.
definitely.
Surely you don't mean that this would be your favorite compared to Code Remix, just the other conferences.
Absolutely not. No. So the country mix I've not experienced yet. So it might be.
I guess it's true that it technically can't have a place on the leaderboard when you haven't gone yet. But I guess we'll just have to strive to hit number one on your leaderboard. I mean, you've been to
Yeah.
so many conferences that I feel like you could give a pretty good like barometer of like how well we do. So I'll have to check in with you afterwards to get
Okay.
a like rating out of 5 stars.
I can give you like various like aspects of the conference, like how good is the speaker dinner, how good is the speaker trip, what are the speaker
The
gifts
really
like,
essential things, yeah.
like the, and then yeah, just should be good. So glad to be returning there, and then hope to see you all there. And then as we've done, I think once before, we want to highlight just one of the community contributions that we get, and we've had quite a few good ones in the past couple of weeks. So one of them that I wanted to highlight is that we're going to be adding a new rewrite Dropwizard module to our recipe offerings. Because we've had someone from the community help out with developing a first set of recipes for folks that are using Dropwizard, but might want to switch to using Spring Boot instead. So we're adding a set of recipes that allow you to have that flexibility where you're using one thing today and you want to be using a different thing tomorrow. And now we're going to make that migration possible with recipes just through the Open Rewrite org recipe modules. So looking forward to that. I'll try to get it in before the next release that I'm trying to do tomorrow. But then, of course, we'll try our best. But we'll see if we actually land it. Because we are planning to do a release tomorrow. I earlier today thought I'd do one today, but I didn't quite manage with all the other things going on when you get back from my snowboarding trip. So we'll do our best and then see you all tomorrow.
Good stuff.
Sure. So that's it in terms of updates right now. Of course, we'll do the regular summary of things new and everything in updated docs tomorrow, so you know all the things that make it into the release. And then we'll also highlight that in next week's episode. So with that, I think we're done with the updates for this week.
Which brings us to our guest, Merlin. Welcome to the show, Merlin. Good to have you. How you been? You're still muted.
Sorry, double
No
security.
problem at all.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.
quite good here. Weather getting better in the next days, so mood is moving upwards.
Yeah, it's nice to have a little bit of sun or some clear skies after it's been dark and cold for a while. We've had a fairly mild winter here in Seattle, but you do get long stretches of gray skies, which can really sap people's energy levels a little bit over time. I've heard, although I don't know if this is true or just something that sounds true, so it gets repeated a lot, that in the United States, Seattle has some of the highest sales of sunglasses because there's such long periods where you don't need them. Everyone has time to lose their sunglasses and have to buy new ones all the time. I don't know if that's true. I haven't personally bought a lot of sunglasses, but here I go repeating the myth like it's fact. So that's how misinformation spreads, I guess. But
Yeah, I'm a glider instructor, and therefore on outside with different weather, and I can tell if you take an yellow or brown sunglass and put it on, the weather looks better instantly.
Yeah,
Regarding
for
how
sure.
bad the weather is, it looks better with the glasses. So
Yeah,
maybe that's the
tricks
point
your
as well.
brain. Like, oh, it's so bright outside. I feel so energized by this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have a long experience not just with the Java ecosystem and but also with hang gliding, right? Like how much hang gliding have you done roughly?
No hang gliding.
Or not hang gliding? Is
I
that the kind of thing we're
paraglided
talking about?
once, but I'm a glider instructor for sailplanes.
Oh,
I
cool.
really teach people how to fly actual planes if I'm
Cool.
not doing other stuff. But
Right. Yeah.
I would love to do it way more, but hey, it's not the main thing to do. You shouldn't do your hobby
Yeah.
for a job.
Yeah.
We'll
And
work on
it
doing
can-
like a company outing here in Europe, I think, for the folks that are just closer.
Yeah, we're collecting more and more pilots. Yes.
Yeah, maybe if Moderne puts on maybe next year Code Remix will be in Europe somewhere, and Merlin could teach. Yeah, it's Andrew who's the hang glider. See, I knew we had someone who did hang gliding, and you started talking about gliding, so I assumed it must be you. But yeah, maybe we could have as like a team morale event. We could you could take us gliding, teach us the ropes.
Yeah,
Well,
sure.
yeah.
Not
How
sure
like
how we get
how
insurance to sign off on such an event, but we'll
I
figure
think
that out.
I think
they would
it's just important that not two people on the board are on the same plane at the same time. So that's not a problem because there are only two seats and I'm not on the board. So
yeah,
all
yeah,
good.
there you go. There you go. So that's all fine. Just don't ask any of the lawyers or insurance people any clarifying questions. So like how many kilometers or like hours have you put into this roughly just cumulatively?
Um, in terms of lifetime,
Yeah.
since I'm 1 year old, because I grew up on an airfield. In terms of experience, I don't know, about 300 hours of active flying, and
All right,
I
all right.
think 1/3 of them at least is teaching people how to fly. So
Mhm. That's cool, man.
I teached a lot after I started teaching, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And so you've also been working in the Java ecosystem for a very long time now, right? I think you told me since what is it like Java 1.5 was
Yeah, I was teached 1.5 at the first point and was forced to work with 1.5. But to be honest, 1.7 were available, but
right.
was not yet updated. But around this time, yes, quite some time, I can say that I'm with confident. I can say that I'm have above 15, 15 years of Java experiences. So that's okay, I think.
Yeah, yeah, that counts. That counts. Once you're over a decade, that's definitely into respectable territory. I think we can all agree. Yeah, and I feel like in some ways a very honest introduction to software engineering to be like, hey, the new version's out. We don't use that yet. Here's the old version of Java that we're actually on. That may have been a bit of foreshadowing for the rest
Yeah,
of your career, huh?
I think the big problem for Java and maybe for other languages, but for way lot used Java languages like Java in enterprise area is exactly this, that you are introduced with an old version, with an old state of frameworks. And everybody saying, yes, that's a horrible language. I learned that at school or at university. It's a horrible language. Yes, but that's probably the Java from 10 years ago, and it's not the Java of today.
Totally.
Definitely not.
Yeah, yeah, totally. You go on, a programmer, humor, social media area, and people if they say anything more specific than like her Java sucks, they might be like, oh, you have to repeat the types on both sides of the assignment state, and it's like you haven't had to do that in a very long time.
Yeah,
But
and
okay.
to be honest, I added a recipe to Open Rewrite. That was basically my first recipe that Tim signed as good first issue, what probably wasn't a good first issue, but I'm in it.
Yeah,
It is
would you
folded
have
down.
started if it wasn't a good first issue?
It took us half a year to write a bunch of recipes to force down var, so local variable type inference on your source code. Just in the end to figure out it's probably not a good idea to include this in the best practices, and put it next to the best practices for if you want to adopt this, here's the
Yeah,
recipe. But we
yeah,
figured out it's probably not that great, and but we found quite some interesting edge cases in the JDK and the JVM.
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, working on open rewrite recipes is good for that, and on the parsers for sure. Yeah, I know that before I started working on open rewrite, I'd never seen this .new before. It was just a piece of Java syntax that I didn't know existed. And it's for when you're declaring an instance of a non-static inner class, which means it's associated with a specific instance of its outer class, and you might need to, if multiple of the outer classes are around, specify which of those you're instantiating it in terms of. that's where it would come up. So it has a legitimate reason to exist. Just one that I had never seen until someone was like, "This source code can't be parsed by your parser. What gives?" And I was like, "This is not new. What?"
Yeah.
So
I had the same story with the $sign.
yeah.
The $sign is used to denote inner classes and is a legal name for an inner class, which makes it very weird. However, the JDK solves this problem, I wasn't able to come up with a solution, to be honest.
Yeah, I remember that exact thing when I was working on an open rewrite, the Java the Java source set marker, which attempts to capture your class path, or list of classes that are available on your class path in the marker, so that you can do things like figure out if adding a star import is going to introduce some ambiguity into your file, and so that you couldn't do a star import or anything like that. And I ran into I ran into exactly that, plus some additional kind of confusion from we're using the class graph library. I think I actually have the code here where I had a note about that exact thing, where I discovered that Java allows $sign in class names, and class graph happened to in some circumstances replace it with a dot in its naming. And so I had to try to kind of puzzle out, okay, is this a class that has dollar in its name, or is it an inner class, or some of this? Yeah, lots of you find lots of interesting edge cases in the business of working on open rewrite recipes and Moderne stuff. But that's also some of the power of it, right? Once you or I or whoever has mastered that edge case and fully encoded it into a recipe, well, now it's not just like tribal knowledge. Now it's not just an interesting fact we know, but it is kind of formalized and documented and part of that recipe forever. I mean, not to say that some of these edge cases weren't formalized and documented in some deep subsection of the Java language spec. I'm sure it's in there somewhere, but So tell me a little bit about a little bit more about your history in the Java ecosystem, Merlin. How did you come to be kind of an expert on Java and language upgrades and migrating old code bases to newer versions of Java?
Funny enough, I'm not only sharing the $sign story with you.
Yeah.
I'm sharing the JavaX upgrade with Jonathan. Because I was the guy who did the JavaX upgrade on our Spring Boot application. Not once, but twice, because the first round it wasn't correctly. So we wrote back completely and did a new round.
Oh man,
and,
that must have been kind of heartbreaking. How long did it take you for that first round that ended up getting rolled back? Like how many hours or weeks of work was that?
The first was a simple search and replace. So
Yep,
why
okay.
it
I
hasn't
see
worked.
why that would get reverted, yeah.
And the second one, I think it took me a week, but to be honest, it was the plus side was it was a very early stage of this greenfield project, so it wasn't that complicated to get it straight. And it was just the Spring integration, so it wasn't that hard.
Yeah.
And from there on, I thought that's kind of dumb, and I always was pushing for we're writing Java 11, yes, but that's a bad idea. Even at that point, we should adopt at least 13 and maybe something more LTS like that's not end of public support.
Right.
Next half year when we go into production, because the idea was we go into production with Java 11 and then we migrate. Turned out that the go live was after the end of public support of Java 11. So not that great idea, to be honest. And that way I came to migration and talking about new Java and then talking about started writing small pieces of educative code for my team. How we should use
them,
Java, more modern Java, and then I came to speaking, came from there. The way wasn't that fast, that far. And I met Tim at Basel One, I think 3 years ago or something like this. And from there on, I think he was new at Moderne or about to join Moderne at this time. And from there on, Open Rewrite popped in my timeline, and I thought, hey, there could be a way to not manually do it just by hand, not only convince people who have to use modern Java. You can just, yeah, I know it costs resource to migrate, just do it, just take this in
you'll be
silence.
happy once you did. Yeah, you'll be
Yes,
happy once
and
you
then
did.
be happy.
Absolutely.
That was
It's
basically
definitely
how I.
something. It's definitely something that I talk about when I show off the Java language migration recipes. It's like, yeah, it moves the absolutely necessary stuff. Your deprecated methods get replaced with their non-deprecated counterpart. But it also takes advantage of some of the new language features. Like, look, your multi-line string concatenation is now a beautiful text block, and your and various other small things to make your code not just look um, not just meet the bare minimum to be called Java 17 or Java 21, but actually look kind of idiomatic for that language level, which is a great teaching tool, right? Like, some people like you and Tim and I like to go out and like, ooh, what are the new features? Which JEPs are getting into this one? But not everyone is as interested in following the news of the cutting edge. But you'll learn how to use a Lambda or whatever else it is if you see it in the code base that you're already familiar with, in the context you're familiar with, and it's a teaching tool as well to have your code base updated to use the new the features and idioms.
Yeah, that's always one thing I advise people in talks and sessions. Take your code and take your migrations, your framework migrations and your Java language migrations, and run them on repeatedly, maybe on a pull request level, because that was something I learned when I was architect for the public section in Germany. I used Open Rewrite migrate Java 11 recipe exactly for this, to train my developers. Look, you have used an old API. It's not bad, but there's a better way to do this, a more Java 11 like way to do this.
Yeah.
And that's one power of the rule-based idempotent repeatability of the recipes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so tell me that's interesting. So did you see, after you'd been running that like that campaign kind of on the pull request for a while, that that people were more enthusiastic about finishing the migration, or were like, oh, I got used to using the new language feature in this context, I want to use it everywhere else as well. Maybe it didn't seem so scary anymore once people had a little bit of exposure to the newer ways of doing things.
I had the honor to work again on a greenfield project, but our neighbor project, sister project, was one of this brownfield legacy projects on an old JBoss version with Java 8, and they just did the bare minimum from Java 8 to Java 11, and therefore their code looks something weird in between. And I took some of their engineers on my project and trained them to work Java 11 and more modern Spring versions, and it created a demand on the other projects because they were able to see our code, see more elegant Java, see the logs, see the abilities on the runtime, that we're more efficient, faster with simpler code from time to time. And it created a demand for them to let's do the same. We need this not only for this project, we need this for a whole infrastructure level, for a whole landscape of projects. We basically need this initiative. It's still, I have contacts back in this project. It's still an ongoing process. As you know, public services is not that fast. Half a year is nothing for them, but
Yeah.
there are the right people know that they have a problem and that there is an action plan already, so they're moving forward. They're trying to be modern, and then they're getting the idea, and they kept this idea of integrating Open Rewrite in the Maven build from time to time and run it again, just to educate themselves. What is there? What can I do better here?
Yeah, you could see it as a even better than release notes is release patches, right? Like here's the new feature in your code base. Yeah, yeah, I would love it. And as we maybe move towards a world that a new version of a library comes out, new version of the language comes out, and with it like comes a PR campaign. Like here's the update. Make it easy to stay up to date and to stay current. And then the more current you are, the easier it is to stay current because there's only small incremental blockers, never big ones. So one thing I'm curious about in this story of how of how you introduce the newer the newer language level of Java to the sister team by like bringing some of the devs over and working in your environment and them getting a taste for it is I've often found with any kind of major engineering initiative, there's a few people who are a bit of a stick in the mud who are like, I don't want to, I don't want to learn the new thing. I don't want to deal with that. It's a pain. It's expensive. I have other stuff to do. So I was curious if you've run into that kind of intransigence or resistance to change in your long history of trying to modernize and uplift code bases, and if so, how you've dealt with it.
We in these teams we didn't have this resistance.
That's great.
I think because we demonstrated how Spring Boot 3.2 and Java 17 can work together if we have the correct platform. That was the second problem. I think at the moment still demanding delayed JBoss 8 release. But the sister projects were on Java 8 and Java EE 7. So there was quite a difference just by us just using Java 11 and Jakarta EE. So this was already a demand. We see the demands to Jakarta EE in 10 and Java 17. And there was even projects we're talking to, there were stuck at 7 and Java 7 and older. So there was and was more like, your tremendous code base could be this simple thing, and everything is updated. And the funny thing was that we were able to show them that even their libraries they are using and the problems they have because they are still relying on Quartz or something like this. It's resolved just by changing the managed version of Spring, and you don't have any problems anymore. So even even project managers got this idea appealing, found the idea appealing. But there's a bigger organization that's in the IT department of the governments are tremendous. I wouldn't call it chip. It's way bigger than a container chip. It's way less agile than a container chip.
Than a container chip.
But only at the whole. And in the small parts, it's great, but in the whole, it's very slow moving.
Yeah, well, there's always inertia in a large code base in a large organization. There's momentum, and it's hard to. It's slow to turn the container ship, as you say, and get it pointed in a new direction. Yeah, but I think there's maybe the fact of how little resistance you encountered and how many shows that you had an effective strategy, right? That showing people nothing is going to demystify something a little bit scary or a little bit like you're worried it's going to be a hassle than actually getting to try it out and being like, oh, this is good actually, right? People then can kind of persuade themselves, and you don't have to sell it quite so hard.
Yeah, and I have the feeling that the Java language architects are down this road as well. They're doing a lot of stuff on the below the surface. Nobody is seeing this, just seeing the numbers of saved money by upgrading just the JDK, not upgrading any code. In terms of less resource consumption, more efficient code execution, less platform thread spinning and stuff like this. And on the other end, they are very actively working with at least 2 projects on the developer sides on making Java way more attractive and way in some JDKs. I think I read that if you're looking from JDKs, the Java enhancement, JDK enhancement proposals from the time Java 11, Java 12, Java 13 to the modern JAPs for Java 24 or something like this. I see it is way more focused on and how do you get there, how easy it is to adapt these features, how fast you can pick them up, and there are some API changes to APIs that the language architects are discouraging you to use to make it even easier to move to
Can you give an
more
example of
modern.
that, like an API that they're discouraging to make it easy? Is he talking about an old API?
It's probably one of the oldest APIs. It's Java Lang Thread. Java Lang Thread is a very old API.
Right.
It's there since Java 1.0 and probably beyond before.
Yeah.
And it's just modeling the platform thread, just a small abstraction on the platform thread. And from there on, the problem now is that the platform threads and the JDK threads, they have to be disconnected, because every time one thread does I/O, it is blocking a platform thread, and the number of platform threads is limited by the operating system. And with the high amount of requests our system's currently experiencing, we have to do something about the platform threads. So the JDK, Java language architects came up with the idea of virtual threads rely on fibers, with funny enough, we're on discussion for Java 2, 1.2 or 1.3
Oh,
already.
really? I didn't know the fiber proposals went back that far.
There was no real proposal. You cannot find it, but somewhere Brian Götz or something like this, or something, dropped this note that they were discussing about it. They know that this is a problem to pin the platform threads and the JDK threads together. And now it is a real problem. They introduce virtual threads. And they're changing the API of threads. Threads now has now a builder API where you can call off platform or off virtual to make it even easier. You can move your platform threads creation from new thread to thread.offPlatform, blah, 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 blah. And from there on, it's just one method call to change, to move to virtual threads, and give the JVM the ability to assign your workload to an arbitrary platform thread and be way more effective with your platform threads.
Nice. Yeah, that does sound handy, and sounds like something that'll be very easy to write a recipe for, to initially just swap out invocations of the new thread constructor to of system thread, and then maybe do some kind of subsequent analysis or some other step to migrate some of the system threads to virtual threads. Yeah, that's cool. I had no idea that the proposal to have fibers and stuff went back to such an old version of Java. It reminds me of a truism I've observed in the software engineering industry and elsewhere, is that there's nothing so permanent as a temporary solution.
Yeah.
that even if at the very beginning some of the problems with matching up a Java thread to a system thread were apparent, it was like, well, good enough for the next 30 years, and then we'll sort this out.
And it definitely was. The pain
was
only hard enough to release to integrate virtual threads in Java 21. So I think until Java 17 or something like this, the pain wasn't high enough.
Right.
to migrate from this old API, and now it is high enough.
Uh-huh.
And with virtual threads, if the JVM manages your threads and
Mhm.
don't block your platform thread, you have way more capabilities of handling your resources, handling your
Totally.
handling your threads. It's no longer that you have to think about, is a thread a good idea to create?
Uh-huh.
It's just created. It's a very thin Java object, nothing
Right.
compared to it. And the JVM takes care of the scheduling, and you don't have to care about, do I have 1.5 times threads, then I have CPUs available as heuristic or
Right.
something like this. You just create threads, whatever you want. It's cheap. It's cheaper as an SSL context or something like this. At this magnitude, something between new int and SSL context,
Right.
and it's fast created, and it's there, and the JVM deals with the stuff around, and it's a drop-in replacement for thread, so
Yeah.
you don't feel any difference.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Are there any other big new features kind of coming up that you're particularly looking forward to? I mean, virtual threads, fibers. That's great. Better garbage collectors are always good. We've seen a lot of people, a lot of companies uh, realize pretty substantial cost savings, particularly if you're operating, a fleet of servers on the cloud somewhere, just from getting to like Java 17 or something, or Java 21, and getting access to ZGC and some of the other modern garbage collectors they've implemented, and seen pretty substantial performance improvements and cost savings as a consequence.
Yes, and I just talking about new features from JDK 24 because it's upcoming. It's released right now, and it has very important, not only preview features, but it's a glimpse in the future. My biggest hope is that that everybody of us is adopting the. Let's zoom it a little bit. That we are not only adopting all of these JDK jabs, because all of them, a lot of them are back back in the back. What I hope is that we're adopting these type patterns everywhere
Mm,
around. That's a very neat feature. Pattern matching and the algebraic data types are a big thing in Java for the last decade, but yeah, for the last at least 5 years. I think my very
mhm.
first session I gave publicly was about sealed interfaces, and
Yes.
that's is predated to my first son's birth, so it's definitely 4+ years away. So um, it's there, and from there on we have this funny stuff. But the big problem was always that it is limited to object types,
Mm,
and
mhm.
you always, if you want to switch about the yearly flights number, for example, which is an integer, you always have
Mhm.
to work with the boxed version of it, putting
Right.
a lot of pressure on the heap memory
Right. Just as,
for no reason, basically.
totally.
Um, and because it's an boxed type, is more the JDK wasn't able to flat this down very easily. If it is
Mhm.
all just an integer, it's very easy to come up with an heuristic to just flat this down to a dump table or something like this.
Totally.
So I definitely looking forward to this one on a programmer perspective,
Yeah.
because it's could be very cool. It would be even cool in recipes to adopt these, because if you're having the next thing they're up to are deconstruction patterns for arbitrary classes. So
Ooh.
if you're defining a deconstruction pattern for, let's say, an LST element,
Mhm.
like the method invocation, and you
Yeah.
can already deconstruct it for the simple name you're just
Mhm.
interested in, and some
Some other field.
arbitrary
Yeah, the
some other
name and the
fields. It's
arguments kind of
very
thing.
easy to just say, okay, we are there. So this would
Yeah.
be, I think, that would be way even cooler than the method matcher interface thing, because it would be a built-in thing, and this built-in thing could be or will be definitely optimized by the JDK and Java C
For sure.
Java compiler. So that would be really cool. It will be nothing for the Open Rewrite core, unfortunately, but for developers of recipe artifacts that are targeting different Java versions, like you know you're running on Java 21 plus, then taking advantage of this could be cool. At least at utilities.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed using like sealed interfaces and some of these destructuring things in Kotlin and other languages. I think it'll present an interesting kind of challenge for some of these other languages built on top of the JVM that have implemented some similar features, but with not exactly the same semantics. Do they then, kind of maintain like a fork or their alternate syntax and their alternate way of doing it, or do they try to rebase it on top of how the Java language has chosen to implement these things? And one example that comes to mind is, a feature I quite liked in Kotlin is its smart typecasting, right? Where you do an instance of check, and inside of that if block, it just automatically casts it to that instance. But there are a few kind of like edge cases with that don't work quite right, or where like if it's not effectively final, the smart cast can't work. But the way Java elected to do it, you give a name to that new variable, and that just totally sidesteps that whole problem. So I think that Java gets the benefit of all of these other languages going and blazing the trail, and can then go and look, oh, this is a good idea, but here's a few little problems that we also want to solve on top of how you did it.
Yeah. From time to time, I tell him I don't like language bashing.
Sure, yeah.
My first reaction would be, yes, it's cool that Kotlin has this feature request, but Java has it since years. It's called the type pattern. But it's a different way, and Java definitely benefits of their slow but steady movement. To have a look at C#, what have they tried? Is this a good feature to adopt? I think the for each thing, the enhanced for loop is something they stole. That's not the correct sense, because programming languages just are a bunch of constructs thrown together, but adopted from C# and or from other languages, and just said, okay, that's cool, but we don't take this deconstruction part, we don't take this casting part, we just take the bare minimum because we think that's more better for the future, more better for our future development. So I can live with the slow movement. I wouldn't call it slow movement if you're looking at these number of features. Just for a release that is next in half a year, we have an next LTS release, and everything that has fourth preview here, or something like this, this will be final, because every of these fourth preview features
have been in there for many versions and have
yes,
been quite
and there are no
battle-tested.
changes in this and what I'm very curious about will put pressure on us, because there will be migration demands on this is again the virtual thread context, the scope values and structure concurrency thing. Because
do you want to open any of these up and preview them a little bit more for our audience?
Yes, sure. I just pull up this one here, because here I have everything available. No,
can we zoom in on this a little bit?
Yeah, I just have to. How we want to start? Let's start with this one, basically. Let's start from here, because so I have a small Gist project available, a small GitHub project available, that I used already in some articles and some talks to demonstrate the power of virtual threads, and there are technologies building on top. At the moment, virtual threads are available in the broader code base. They are general available. They're there, and they are final, and they are there to stick. They will not go away. And one of the cool things about virtual thread is that they are very lightweight, and you don't have to care about how many threads you are creating. But that puts a few different topics or pressures on a JVM. And one of them is, how do we coordinate the work of this mud thread in our source code? And how do we manage shared data across these number of threads efficiently without, again, polluting our code base or our heap memory? And I came up with the very small rule engine, because one other thing I love are rule engines, because they are easy, predictable, and very cool code things. They are just a list of rules and some data to execute on. And this GitHub just was publicly available. I created a very basic rule engine, not production ready, but basic rule engine with these two preview features: structured concurrency to manage the different execution paths, and scope values to share shared data, common data here. And
it's not quite. It's a little bit orthogonal to what you're talking about, but I also noticed that this that this file is taking advantage of the new more terse syntax for declaring a class with the main method, or rather that you don't have to declare a class around your main method anymore, which might be a bit of a surprise to longtime Java developers who are used to that.
Here are a few features of newer Java compared to Java 11. First of all, we have all of the collections APIs has these factory methods now. They are way cooler because they are producing an immutable collection, and you don't have to deal about what is changing here. So especially in a concurrent context, very good to do. We have local variable type inference, because I don't want to tell you that's a map of string if it's on the other side as well. We have implicit class creation. We have a top-level method definition for main here, just to shorten the code base and to get easily started. But yes, that's always also modern Java in terms of from a view of Java 11.
Yeah.
And once again, we talked about the thoughts the language architect invest in easy adoptability. In notice executors class. They also have added a new executor implementation, new thread per executor thread. So it is no longer pooling threads, this executor, it's just creating new virtual threads. Every submit call down here creates a new virtual thread, and that is exactly how you should work with virtual threads. Don't try to pool them, because the JVM takes care of it. Just create them. What we are now doing here, we are setting up this engine. We are providing an SSL context, because we are thinking of, okay, an SSL context is expensive to create and shouldn't be created. Here we just submit 2 executions, but if we are taking a rule engine on an enterprise level, dealing with decisions inside an insurance company or something like this, this will easily end up to a couple of thousands parallel requests, and creating one SSL context every 1,000th of a second is definitely not a great idea, because it will slow down your system. And it probably will confuse your other side if you're coming up with as exact same system from time to time with the different version of your SSL context. So we decided to just keep this in mind as we're taking the same SSL context all the way down to everything, because that is something we are sharing across threads. What comes next is one rule. This rule executes two things, basically. It reads the name and it reads the address, supposedly from a system where it needs I/O, maybe once from a database, once from a REST service. It is blocking sometimes even some milliseconds if you're taking way above 1,000, 2,000 requests per second. Milliseconds are a big number, a big amount of waiting time, and a big problem in blocking, and it's really slowing you down.
Right.
So you want to do it concurrently. One option at the moment is taking advantage of the completable future in JDK, which is available from 1.7, I think, or something around this, so it's quite long there.
Yeah.
But a big problem with completable futures is always that completable futures are created somewhere and waited for it. But they are good for executing one thing in parallel. But if you're creating 3 or 4 of them and waiting for all of them, it's quite hard to define this one point to wait for your concurrent execution to join together. And to know at this point we are done and ready to proceed.
Right.
And even though completable futures are relying on your executors, which are mostly based on thread pooling or something like this, maybe you have migrated to one virtual thread per executor thing. But if you're migrated to the new virtual thread version of your executor, you can take advantage of the structured scope, because the structured task scope is something you're seeing. It is an try with resource block here. It is opening and closed down here. And here you have your defined scope where your concurrent methods are executed, where your concurrent actions take place. And you have one exact place here, one place where to handle your exceptions and your problems. With computable futures, it's always a problem because there are nested arbitrary numbers of levels down below, and probably not even bubbling up as they are typed they are supposed to be. So with structured concurrency, you have your task scope defined. You're forking from there, and this is not a runnable. This is an callable. So it's not even tied to the concurrency API. It's just our very normal, very well-known functional interfaces.
I quite like that you get access to all of this lightweight concurrency without having to go and mark every single method in your code base as async. And
yet even that's not bubbling up. And you have your very easy to use supplier here. You don't have a special interface anymore. You have just a supplier, and you can call get on these values just to get your value. But before you are calling get, you have to somehow make safe that they are joined together. The join method, maybe for the folks that are not that familiar with concurrency as well, fork always creates a new thread from the existing thread, and join is the reverse operation, waiting in a parent thread for all your child threads to join to be finished. And this join is blocking. We have a join version as well with the timeout, of course, because we're in 2025 and no longer in the 90s.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we have directly tied to this join call, we have a configuration how our problem-solving strategy is. So here we are telling us if any of the forked methods is failing to a failed state, we take this failing, the exception, bubbling up exception, and rethrow it. And then it's just one layout inside an execution exception or interrupted exception that's guaranteed, and it's not bubbled up in arbitrary amount of execution exceptions here.
Right.
One other neat thing is that the structured task scope always have one closing strategy defined in the very beginning. And this time, shut down on failure. So any failed forked subtask will lead to a failure on a structured task scope. Every concurrent action will be cancelled, and we are going down to this problem. We have different scopes here. We have shutdown on first success, and with the SPI interface, it is easy to plug in your own structured task scope failing strategies, shutdown strategies here. And one last thing which is very important to take notice of is this scoped value thing. Again,
is this kind of like a thread local, or?
Yeah, that's the lightweight thread local thing.
Got it.
And the neat thing is the scope value is even able to work with platform threads.
Nice.
So it is kind of a drop-in replacement, kind of, because thread local is mutable. Scope values is immutable.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And little bit difference in semantics. Scope values, one scope value is the same instance for all child threads compared to thread local, where every thread gets their own instance.
Copy. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why scope values are immutable, because
allocations.
if you're sharing your instance and you're immutable, you're definitely in hell. And there's no way out of it.
Yeah.
The value will be mutated and you will have problems.
And debugging them will be a huge pain in the ass, because it's not going to reproduce under your debugger because you changed the timing.
Yes. And the APA is again very small, very few to adopt. You create a new instance of your scope value. And but this scope value is not the value, it's a value holder. So you can ask the value holder to provide you the value you need to configure which value your child threads are seeing. You're taking this scope value where method. So we are saying the context. So my input data is this one. My SSL context is my just one provided. Remember the new engine call? Just once provided SSL context. And on this execution scope, we run again all of our rules. There are again virtual threads. Yes, we are creating in our virtual threads when we are executing the rule. Remember down here, we are creating virtual threads again to call out to our external systems, which is not a problem. We don't have to think about how many virtual threads we are using, because they are just lightweight objects. And with the scope value API, we make sure that every scope value, every virtual thread, child thread, accesses the same value. So the same map of our input data and the same as the context. There are two ways to access this data. One is just calling the context and .get. This is the accept. So that's only the get way. There are two possible ways to make sure that the data really got assigned. Because just your knowing that there's a scope value doesn't mean that whoever starts you and configures your scope has configured the correct value. So you either have the isPresent method, which reminds us on the optional semantics, or the get or throw version. So you have the option of, this is a mandatory value. If this is missing, I'm throwing an exception because I'm unable to bug. Or I have the explicit check for, do I have this SSL context? Yes. Okay, then I do the call to another system or not. And why I think that will put pressure on us is, first of all, everybody should migrate to virtual threads by using, wherever possible, this executors.new virtual threads per task executor. Everybody, wherever you are, just drop in a replacement. Don't care anymore about platform threads. Or the threads.off virtual version. And what's coming in the Java 2025 release, I don't know, but I think it will be final there, is the scope value. And the scope value is a drop-in replacement. It's already stated in the JEP. It's considered a drop-in replacement for thread local variables that are never mutated. Because without having a thread local, you're lowering the pressure, you're enabling virtual threads, and therefore, to be honest, save money and resources tremendously.
For sure.
So I'm looking definitely at this, and I think there will be demand for these migrations on day zero, to be honest.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll definitely be looking to help people to migrate to adopt the new version of Java and some of these new language features. It looks like we're about at time. Do you have any final remarks, perhaps, Merlin, about anything looking forward to in the Java ecosystem, or any other JEP perhaps that we didn't get to look at today, but you think is cool and maybe our viewers should check out on their own time?
Definitely this virtual thread and structured concurrency stuff.
Absolutely.
This better matching stuff I showed you, and the stream gatherer stuff. I know that a lot of people are not happy with streams and all the available methods. Stream gatherers are tackling exactly this problem by let you define arbitrary intermediate methods. The API, again, is at the first place a little bit complex, but after half an hour, it's getting clearer and easier to deal around with that. And second point, I have to repeat something which is very important. Please never pull virtual threads. Migrate to virtual threads immediately. And while you're migrating, keep an eye on local variables that are never mutated. That's the thread locals you are migrating to scoped values. And keep an eye open for completable futures. Hold them together and be ready to make a structured scope out of it for structured concurrency. And I think then you're ready for a very efficient migration of Java 25.
Yeah, good tip. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Merlin, and giving us a bit of a preview of what is to come in the next version of Java. I'm sure we'll have you or maybe someone else on the team back on to talk about the Java 25 open rewrite migration once we've fleshed that out a little bit. But yeah, really exciting stuff. Always nice to see the tools we use on a day-to-day basis getting steadily better. So
Definitely.
thanks for joining us. It's a pleasure talking with you. Tim, do we have any other closing remarks? Obviously,
Thanks for
people should
having me.
come to Code Remix Summit.
Yep. The Code Remix Summit, definitely. It's so that's in 2 months or 5-6 weeks, I believe.
Something
and then
like
of
that.
course we have Java Land next week. So I hope to see you all there.
Yeah.
And then I think for next week, we'll be driving back from Java Land. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be home in time to help co-host the next
Sounds
edition.
like I've got to come up with a topic or find someone else to bring on the show. Yeah.
So yeah, no, looking forward to that either way. And then
Tim, you missed one session we have because the Friday after Java Land, I'm in Weiden in the Oberpfalz for
Okay,
again an open rewrite migration track. So
Excellent.
perfect. Looking forward to it.
we will see us
Then
wherever you are. We are there.
we'll share the link. Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, then thanks all for watching, and hope to see you all next week. Cheers.
Talk to you again
Thanks for
soon.
having. Have a good week.
Thanks all. Bye bye.
Join us in Miami for Code Remix Summit. Attend hands-on sessions with some of the best industry experts. Looking for immediate ROI by attending? Bring a relevant business case and work directly on solutions affecting your organization in the hack track. Bring your problem, bring your laptop, and walk away with work done for your boss. Register today for Code Remix Summit.